All right. Welcome to The Last Man. How you doing, Derek?
Welcome. I'm doing great. How about you, Phil?
Doing well, thanks. We have a guest tonight. How are you doing, sir?
Good. How are you?
Well, it's a little cold outside.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to adjust to this weather, and we're in Tennessee, and we usually have pretty mild winters as of late, and so it's staying down next to freezing a lot lately. So
It's snowing right now.
yeah,
It's snowing right now, and then
yeah,
Wednesday we'll have a big snow.
right.
The forecast said that, right?
Yep.
Wednesday.
It's supposed to snow again. That's fine. That means we'll just drag the sleds out, and I'll take the teenagers, and we'll go.
Yep.
Anyway, so thank you for joining us again. We asked you back because there are a couple of issues that we wanted just to get a chance to discuss, to get some more information on. Specifically, there's a lot going on at a national level today. There's tons of politics that are playing out, and it's probably a mixture of entertaining and confusing to watch. But specifically with the tariffs and the way that the tariffs have been imposed on China. The last time you were here, we talked about it a little bit, and I made the assertion that it was intended to onshore, right? That the whole goal was to bring manufacturing and production back to the States, and I'm not sure that that's the way that it's playing out. I think it may be being used in different ways, and so I wanted to see what your thoughts on it were and ask you for your take. And what do you make of what's going on with all the tariffs that President Trump's laying out?
So obviously the 10% of the Chinese import, the additional tariff, that's definitely not healthy for the entire global supply chain, right?
Right.
And then it definitely will cause inflation to U.S. market. That's 100% sure.
Yeah.
Because that 10% tariff is not on specific category. It's on everything, right? Normally, from my point of view, it's like if you have certain category, you do investigation, right? You research if it's dumping the price, if it's dumping the market, then you need to have a specific tariff.
How does increasing that portion of the supply chain
Yes.
inflate the cost, the end
Yes.
user, the product? Yeah.
Right now, it's like it feels like Trump is trying to close his eyes and then dump it. It's like you're dumping, and then I'll add 10% to you, and then no matter what. It's just everything. So it's kind of not a wise decision for global supply chain. First, second is definitely will be bad for the domestic inflation, U.S. inflation, right?
So I'm wondering, because it's right now it's a 10% across the board tariff, right? There were already some products that had really high, like we found out, really high tariffs. Some of them were as high as 600%.
Yes.
In those situations, because keep in mind, part of the problem that the Trump administration has had is that costs have gotten so crazy that the U.S. is having problems sustaining itself. Right now, he's attacking that in different ways. He's shrinking the government, the federal government. He's trying to cut out and eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse as much as possible. And those are great steps. However, I think part of it is as well is the fact that he's looking at this and saying, because we've outsourced so much of our product, to foreign shores, we have to find a way to get revenue in as a result of that. Is that the motive behind it, or do you think he's trying to affect political change? What's he doing?
From my point of view, it's 100% political.
Yeah.
This is not trying to protect domestic manufacturing or whatever, but this is definitely political because he did not do any research on the background, right? For certain stuff, Chinese supply chain or the China supply chain is trying to help U.S., right? For example, iPhone.
Right.
You can never produce that in U.S. That's kind of for sure because
we don't have the raw materials. Yeah.
Exactly. First, raw material. Second is labor, and then the pollution, the everything, right?
Yeah.
Made in China or made in Vietnam.
Yeah.
It's a good choice for U.S. market, right?
They can't produce it for $10.
Exactly.
That's for sure.
Exactly. If Trump is trying to do tariff on iPhone, right, that means definitely consumers will pay for that. Because Apple will not pay for that.
Right.
Right. It's consumers, right? So, my view is that's political, 10%.
Yeah.
It either will change in next month, or it just kind of keep increasing.
Yeah.
Right. So you cannot do 10% for 1 month and then it will be lost forever for tariffs. Right.
So you think that the supply chain for Chinese companies is permanently increased by 10%?
Yes.
Well, because I know with China and Mexico, he was using them to try to produce a specific result, right? He was trying to get help on the border. He was trying to do a number of things. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, yeah, Mexico and Canada. Sorry, and but yeah, it's so yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't considered that. I thought he was trying to produce something as well, so I just didn't know what it was. I haven't known what it was.
So in my previous company, I used to work for a Canada company, so they export like house goods, furnitures, those kind of stuff from Canada to US, right? So if there's lots of manufacturing in Canada and also Mexico producing for US market, right? So if there's any tariff, those companies will die easily.
Right.
So I think the two governments from Mexico and also from Canada, they would do everything to stop that tariff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think Canada, they're already proving like they're trying to stay together, not buying U.S. products. Making a point, to avoid. I think, you watch YouTube. Some YouTubers going down the shopping aisles said that even put U.S. products on the bottom shelf so you can't really see them. And they put theirs, eye level, so people will purchase theirs. So
yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. When you were saying like the tariffs, how they're just a 10% blanket tariff on everything. That's exactly what you don't want. Like, there's a right way to do it. Like, you're going to get funds for like the government. You do it in a way that's not like seen to be retaliatory or
aggressive,
anything like that. Where you try to get funds, for the United States. And he did the exact opposite of what I thought he was going to do with it. Like, I had no idea what he was going to do with it. But when you see that happening, you see people start moving away. Like, you're picking fights with your allies. You're not addressing, the issues or anything with them. They're just like 25%. Do what I say. So people around the world see that and just going to slowly move away from U.S. products. They're going to start trading among each other. I think that's already been happening. I haven't kept up with, who's been trading with who, but that's pretty much where it's going to lead to. If you're a smart country, that's what's going to happen. If another country's not giving you what you need or, being aggressive, then you can always trade with somebody else, so.
Yeah. Well, I wonder because we were questioning whether it was intended to, and we generally said offshore, but whether it was intended to encourage buying local and encourage people to do that, I don't know, because I'm not sure a 10% impacts that much, right? If somebody's, maybe if you're talking about vehicles on the overall cost, if you're talking about a $30,000 car and it, a 10% tariff or 10% additional cost, making it 33, that could make a difference, but it's not a huge one. And that aside, we don't import cars from China, right? That's not.
I disagree about that.
Do you?
So that's 10% for everything, including all the raw materials when producing.
So it'd be a lot more than a 10% increase on the vehicle, is what you're saying.
It will be all the parts. For example, U.S. is not importing the finished cars from China, right? But U.S. is
a lot of the supply chain.
Import the car seats, textiles, metals, parts, those kind of stuff from China, glass, right?
No, I think the only way you can get away from that is if you have some parts assembled there and then some parts assembled here in the United States.
Even then, you'd pay it on that on the whole. So you're saying that it will boil down to a lot more than a 10% increase on larger products, on complex products like iPhones and things like that.
Oh yeah,
that makes sense. I hadn't thought of that.
The 10% is including everything, right?
Yeah,
that's not just finished product. It's a
so you're in the car, your seat cushions become 10% more, your bolts becomes 10% more. I got you. That makes sense. I hadn't thought of that. That's I don't know. I don't know what the intention is. That's one thing I wish that would be a little more transparent as to why, because another thing we talked about is the fact that he discusses the trade deficit, right? And I don't know, these may be clues into what he's thinking, because when he talks about the trade deficit with China being in $1.5 billion deficit, I don't understand. I mean, I guess I see, but I don't understand why that's such a big deal, right? It's not, so we buy a lot more stuff than they buy of ours, but we don't produce as much stuff as China does either. So it's not an equal proposition. It's like, their manufacturing base is a lot larger, but But at the same time, they might all be wrapped up in what he's saying, which is we have to find a way to get income to the government because we've got to decrease deflation and we need funding to do this. So that could be part of it. But again, I wish they would be a little more transparent in what they're trying to accomplish with these things personally.
Yeah. I think as a developer country, right, United States, the developer country has a privilege to buy product from developing country, right, at a lower cost.
Right.
That's kind of benefits people in the developed country like United States, right? So basically, United States is buying lower cost goods from developing country to kind of makes the people in the United States live better life, right? Much lower cost than producing in the US, right? That's kind of privilege, I think.
Yeah.
That's why I don't understand that trade deficits matter so much.
Right. Right. I agree. I think it is a privilege. And I think some of what I can only guess here, but my guess is that the intent is to try to capture as much revenue as possible because we're noticing that there's a lot of revenue that's been funneled out in impropriety and in bad situations that shouldn't have gone to different places, and there have been a lot of bad actors. And so, as we start trying to purge that, if we're not careful by shrinking the government, we have to maintain that balance of maintaining revenue at the federal level so that we do have enough to fund the things that are absolutely essential. We live in a country that taxes its citizens heavily. So you would think that would be enough, but just with the misappropriation that's gone on, it hasn't. And so we're left in this situation of, okay, well, how do we cut, $3 trillion a year? Or maybe I think that I don't remember exactly what it is. I think maybe $2 trillion deficit each year or something like that. How do we cut that out? And it's a lot. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm not an economist, but I do understand that it doesn't make sense just to arbitrarily tax or arbitrarily tariff if there's no end goal. So I would be interested in knowing what the end goal is. I don't know.
But I think that's pretty much his ultimate goal is just to get money.
Yeah.
Maybe spending that for our infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah. What are the downstream effects? What's it going to? Is it just going to cause less product being purchased from China, or is it going to cost is the result going to be just costing more? I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Because arguably the American people have the money if we don't count the deficit and the debt. Right?
So, a couple things I want to discuss. First is it will make more Chinese factories to move the manufacture place out of China to the countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, those kind of South Asia factory countries, right?
Right.
Also to Africa, like Morocco, like Egypt, right? There are more and more factories being built by Chinese people in those kind of developing countries. So the purpose of why Chinese people is building more factories in those countries is they're trying to escape from the tariff from US, right? So that's one thing is happening right now, because I know some of my supplier from China is already moving their factory right now, or either they're moving or they're planning to move.
And that's moving out of China?
Yes.
And that's because of that 10% tariff?
And also including the previous tariff.
Okay,
right.
Gotcha.
Tell them to come here.
No.
That was quick. He said no.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
The manufacturing the foundation of manufacturing here is not as good as some developing countries, because the labor cost here is much, much higher. If you want to do textiles in the United States, it will cost more.
Yeah.
Right? It definitely costs more. If you want to make iPhone here,
right,
you spend like $3,000 for iPhone, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. So you have to make it make sense
Yeah.
to produce in USA. Some factories is already building factories in United States, like the China battery factory is already building plants, right, in Detroit. I know that.
Mhm.
The biggest battery company, right?
Yeah.
And also there's a couple like TikTok, right? Those kind of technology companies already moving from China to here,
Right.
to kind of run the US business, or right. But there's another thing, is the 10% tariff is definitely will make the consumers spend more money. That's for sure, right? You cannot feel it in 2 months or 3 months, but after 3 months, you definitely feel that the inflation is going up.
Right.
the goods you're purchasing is pricing up, right? For example, if you want to buy a drone from DJI, right, you'll definitely feel the 10% pretty soon.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think now how we measure if we're in a recession or when we're feeling like the economic burden, and people measure the price of eggs.
Yeah.
They're like $6 right now.
Yeah.
You're talking about they used to be $2, 50 cents, $3, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But that's the measuring stick now.
Well, I know a large part of that has been energy. So a large part of that has been oil and oil futures and the price per barrel of oil. And that's the reason for the drilling initiatives and the trying to revamp the oil production of the United States. All of the green initiatives of both Canada and the U.S. had crazy effects on global markets because everything got expensive. And so because energy's in everything, right? Energy is in transportation, it's in production, it's in delivery. That's transportation. It's every aspect of it is impacted by the price per barrel of oil. And especially when you start talking about refined crude for things like transportation. And so it's a big player. And so if we can do that, that would have a big impact. And I'm hoping that some of the things that he does has enough of an offset to, at first, I think all we can hope for now is to freeze inflation. I don't know that we can hope to make it go away right away. I think we have to figure out where all the money's been going first. And then, so, that's what I like about what they're doing is trying to do a root cause analysis, what we would call in the tech world, trying to figure out what happened, how it happened, and who it happened to. That way we can detail. And the only way to do that is to audit everything. So that's what's going on, right now. So hopefully that will bear fruit. At least we, as the American people, will know what happened. Worst case scenario. But yeah. So, any other thoughts or questions on that subject before we?
Yeah. So for the
10%,
all right. It's very interesting. I was trying to buy another Lenovo computer, right? So I got a quote from last month, and then I'm very excited to see what will happen in March.
Mm-hmm.
So will the new because I think majority of the Lenovo computers is made in China, right? So I got exactly what I want right now. I want to compare it after 2 months. What the price will look like.
See if it goes down or up.
Yeah. See it will go down or up. Yeah. So let's see.
All right. Yeah.
The one that you're looking for, or are you looking for the one that raises up?
No, the X1.
Yeah.
X1. Yeah. So let's see. I think it will go up.
You think so?
I think.
Yeah.
Man, everything seems to go up. So.
Well, he's saying it comes from China, so that would be the result of the tariff. We'll see, though. I guess ultimately that depends on, well, that specifically doesn't depend on inflation. That depends on just the cost of materials, I guess, right? Yes. That's a cost of material function. So you'd be, because like the question, like now to your question, do eggs get more expensive or less expensive? That could go down over the next month or two if things are handled right. But
it has to, otherwise we're gonna have to start buying chickens.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, I'll be interested to see too.
The 10% is definitely hurting the China supply chain.
Yeah.
Because more and more factories are moving out of China, right? That means the factory owners are using more money, right, to have a new factory in a third country.
Right. So they're going to have to increase profits to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, they're going to have to pay for it.
And then the qualities will not be as good as China made.
Yeah.
At least for the starting 2 years, right? They have to train the workers. They have to set up the process. They need to find the right people to start the factory, right? So I think it's definitely hurting the global supply chain, especially to U.S.
Interesting.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, that's a pretty big loaded cost.
Yeah. For example, if you have a factory in China, not textile, but some kind of technology, right? You have an entire manufacturing line.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you need to think about you invest that money to a certain country, in a country you never been there before.
Right.
You have a new factory there. You need to hire people. You need to start buy the plant, buy the land, build the kind of a plant, move the kind of machinery.
Then you got to tool it, right? The tooling cost. Yeah.
Yeah, think about that.
Training cost, onboarding, all that stuff.
The investment you made, and then you will definitely increase price.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. You think that's going to affect everything? You think that just this inflation on China alone will increase the cost of most things?
I think it will cause inflation a lot.
Anything that's not local.
Yeah, and it's not local.
Yeah.
And China will definitely be hurt by that because, China already have a labor issue, right? They have the unemployment rate pretty high.
Is it?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar. Yeah.
So, if we move the factory out of China, that means more and more people will have no job.
Right.
Right. So, it definitely will hurt China.
How is China handling that?
Get people to school, right?
Right.
The children go to school, right? More access to universities, college, right?
It's big. That's a lot. That is a very complicated puzzle with a lot of pieces, a lot of moving pieces in it. I don't know. Well,
yeah, I guess that's the only thing we can do is wait and see.
Yeah. Well, any additional thoughts on tariffs before we migrate to the second one?
I just hope there's no additional tariff on China again.
Right.
It will cause my job much, much more difficult.
Keep you running around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope so too. I would like to see them come up with a goal to get rid of it. Right. Come up with if we can do this, then that'll disappear. This is what we need from this situation, because it struck me as I don't know. It seems like an obtuse way an indirect way to get a result, right? It seems like you could say, look, we need, if the issue is the trade deficit, I don't know why it would be, but if the issue is the trade deficit, say, look, we need to purchase more from you. We needed, some sort of trade agreement. But
you can only hand that by textile from the United States, right?
Right. No, I know. But we could come up with some sort of trade agreement that would facilitate that and decrease the cost and supply chain cost of that would produce something for the American people that would be in both of our benefits. And so, like you said, it wouldn't hurt the Chinese people. I don't know. It's a lot.
I guess we want to figure it out. We have to read The Art of Negotiation, give us some insight on where this might be going. But
yeah. Well, so the next issue is a more abstract issue, or the next discussion point is China and U.S. relations, essentially. So I don't know. Let's start with you. What do you see about China and U.S. relations? Just based on the information you've had access to, what is your understanding of it? What do you see? Because you and I kind of sit on different sides of the political spectrum. So what do you see? What have you noted, and what are your thoughts?
Well, I just hope this is just a small thing. It's not going to be like a actual blown out trade war or anything like that, because we need to work together. I think relationships with, just not China, but everybody around the world, is what I look forward to seeing. Just more than what we've been talking about, I just hope that it doesn't lead to something that, that both countries will regret. Like
conflict. I hope so as well. Yeah. Yeah. And I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. I'm trying, because I think, the last time you mentioned that when you're in China, what you hear about the U.S. is bad. And when you're in the U.S., what you hear about China is bad. And it's curious to me that we are being so, I don't know. The U.S. is going through a lot right now as far as learning about the propaganda aims that its media institutions have been pushing, but as that, there has to be a fallout. There has to be a place where people settle out and start to realize, okay, look, we have to be more scrutinizing about where we get our information. That said, it seems like regularly we're hearing about China posturing or threatening in some way, and I don't know that it's always. It may be provoked. I don't know. I'm not watching it as closely as I could. For our first interview, I did a ton of research on China, and I kept looking at it after we interviewed, just because I wanted to keep following up on some threads, and at one point I was like, okay, this is starting to tick me off, right? Like this is getting, like this feels aggressive. Like what's going on, and so. then you hear about the telecom hacks, and you hear about different hacks that you hear about these things, and it seems like either someone is trying to push us into some sort of confrontation, or there is some sort of confrontation broiling. And then you hear about issues like Taiwan, and I don't know how to see the Taiwan issue. I genuinely don't, because as someone from Hong Kong, you might have a unique position on this, but it seems like they wanted to be separate, and they should be separate, but China has said no, that's not ever going to happen, and just wait until I find the way, and we're taking them. It's going to happen, and so they call them a sovereign territory of the Chinese mainland. So it's interesting to see what do you think's behind that? How do you see it, and what do you think's being perpetuated by media in the two countries, and what of its actual conflict, what of its actual disagreement, and where do you think that comes from?
So whatever happened in U.S., like you heard lots of bad news from China, right? Like Chinese is attacking, the telecom company, right? And also it's also happening in China, right? So there's no CIA in China, but there's another kind of CIA-like agency in China keep reporting they find spies from United States. United States is trying to find some Chinese people in USA and then go back to China to be a spy. Those kind of things keep being reporting, right? So the two governments is not kind of working with each other. They're trying to build those kind of conflict, I think. Sometimes there's a saying in China, it's like when the economy is bad, when the people is not feeling happy, right? They will create those kind of conflict between the countries to distract the people, right? So that they know, oh, I'm living a war good enough, just kind of keep working and then don't complain, right? So that's what I think. China government knows Chinese people is not happy at this stage. They're trying to build some conflict outside of the country to satisfy the people, to make the people just kind of
bring them together.
Yeah, bring together. It's kind of a strategy, I think, from what I see in China.
Yeah.
So I think it will be the same in U.S. So we have so many issues here in U.S. I'm living in U.S., right? Everything, the interest rate, everything, right? I don't want to mention every single problems, right?
I understand.
So U.S. need to have some outside competition or competitor.
A boogeyman.
Yes.
Yeah.
To make sure the people still hang there. They understand the country has a bigger problem to handle with, right? So it's just kind of view. Yeah, you might disagree.
No, that's interesting. It's a perfectly valid position. That's why I asked. I don't know, because when you look at it, the last I saw, and may have been a couple weeks, but the last I saw, the U.S. market value was at like 36 trillion. China was in second at 24 trillion. So you guys are about 12 trillion behind us annually.
50%.
Right, which is an indicator to me, because you guys are currently the most rapidly industrialized country on the planet. You guys have industrialized in a period of like 50 or 60 years. It's crazy. And with your population challenges, that's incredible. We industrialized over a period of like 150 years. So it's a much different prospect. And that's where a lot of the U.S. media has been galvanized as far as, oh, look, China keeps building coal fire plants, and and it's like, what are we going to build them nuclear reactors? I mean, what's the option? They got to provide heat for a billion and a half people, and so I get it. But then at the same time, they want to use that to justify green initiatives and carbon taxes and things that are just. Now, this is getting into some of the left and right issues in the U.S. because that's a very left-centered and left-focused talking point and issue. But despite the left and right divides, I think that it's a question of, okay, so how do we as a country, because right now we're the number one economy on the planet. You can refer to that as the largest market. You can refer to that as the largest superpower. When you talk militarily, you can refer to that a lot of different ways. I mean, I think we have 750 or 780 bases off of U.S. soil. That's an insane that's an insane amount of military might projected abroad. That's crazy. And so I could see where from the position of China, it's very intimidating, right? I could see it as this, well, we don't want you doing that to us. We want to manage ourselves. And so but at the same time, it seems like China's been given the leeway to do that, right? Like we haven't interfered that much. The only place we've interfered is under, presumably, and there's probably things that I don't know about, but in places where it's been part of our supply chain, Taiwan being an example with the superconductor market and the microchip market. And so in those situations where we've set up supply chains that run along Chinese interests, I think that's where some of the contention's begun. But still, as an American citizen, I don't know how to take some of the I don't know if it's posturing. You gave an example of what you thought it was. I'd be interested. Do you see? Are we destined for war? Are we going to end up having to fight China? Because it seems like there are some groups out there that want us to think that's inevitable, or we're marching toward it. And it's like, why would we paint that? Why would we draw that as a foregone conclusion? I bet if you polled Americans, I bet 98% of them would say, no, we don't want to fight the Chinese. No, that's okay. No, we're good. But that doesn't necessarily get represented at media or at a national level. And so what do you think's behind it? Do you notice the same thing? I guess we'll start there.
Yes.
What do you make of it?
I think there in 2016, I'm not sure if there's any report in U.S. China and U.S. almost fighting South Asia Sea.
Okay.
Almost.
Over the South China Sea?
Yeah, South China
Yeah,
Sea. Yes.
I heard about that. Yeah.
Heard about that,
Over
right?
the shipping lanes.
Very, very close.
Yeah.
So after that,
And that was now, just to clarify for people, that was a result of China expanding bases into the South China Sea and claiming they weren't doing it. Is that correct? Yeah, okay. I'm not trying to point any fingers. That was the accusation. The accusation was you guys are extending your military power outside of your country into the South China Sea. You're scaring Australia, the Philippines, Thailand, all the different countries down there are getting concerned. That was the accusation. Now, whether it was accurate or not, you would have to tell me, because I only remember what I remember from news and what I studied a little bit of it at the time. But yeah, so that was, I just want to set the stage. So am I right? Is that what it was?
yes. So I believe it's like U.S. military already into the China Sea, and then China has no choice but to engage. That's what happened.
That's what,
right?
okay.
Yes, what happened. And also, China has some kind of a territory conflict with Japan. I'm not sure if you know that. So what Japan is doing though is trying to manually expand some small island to a bigger island so that they can have military.
They're building a base.
Building base.
Yes.
Right? So China was first against that kind of behavior in United Nations.
Especially after World War II when they
Yes.
invaded. Yes.
Japan
Yes.
disagreed, and then U.S. disagreed, and they said they can do that.
Right.
And then China, they have lots of manufacturing, like those kind of
Right.
machines, right?
Right.
But China has, since Japan is doing that,
That's
China
up
is
near
doing the same.
Dalian and
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
China is doing the same, expanding the small island to a bigger island, right? Building the base. So that's what happened. China is building base in South China Sea, and then
And see, that's how it came to the U.S. There's the news reports in the U.S. where China claims they're not expanding global military power, but we have evidence from satellite captures that they're building these military installations in the South China Sea.
but Japan is doing the same.
Right,
They're
right.
starting from Japan.
Right. And the response to that was Australia going, "Hey, U.S., help! Right, we need help. Do something. Stop them." And I don't think I don't remember the Philippines getting mixed into it, but it's right at the tip of their archipelago, so it's right there. But yeah, so please continue. Yeah.
So I think right now we all have crazy. I shouldn't say that. Okay. But also, China has a crazy king, and the U.S. might also has a
Right.
crazy king. Sorry, I say that. So nobody knows what happened. But the good thing is, Trump is a businessman.
Yeah.
He does not want to fight with another country,
Right.
especially the number two.
Power in the world. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Power in the world. So if China and U.S. really cannot start fighting with each other, nobody will.
No,
survive after
we all
that.
lose that.
We all lose
That's a horrible scenario.
Yes. So from what I can see is China is trying. I think in 10 years, the GDP wise or the economy wise, China can catch US.
All right. That's what it
10
seems
years.
like. About 10 years.
About 10 years. So what China is trying to do is setting that 10 years like shorter and shorter, right? Maybe 8 years, 4 years.
In the runway. Yeah.
Shorter and runway, and then China is trying to kind of develop without any war in that 10 years. right? But what U.S. is trying to do is giving more and more pressure to China to kind of make that 10 years much longer, right? To 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. But I think both China and U.S. knows China will catching on the GDP of U.S. in 10 years.
What do you think the reason for trying to extend that runway would be? Why would we care if you guys become a larger economy than us? Why would that matter to us?
The number one always want to be the number one.
You think?
Yes.
But not first or last.
I don't know. I would agree if we're talking about the strongest, maybe. I could see that in the context of the strongest. I can't see it in the context of the best. I can't see it in the context of better off. I would be completely okay. I think most Americans would be completely okay if China were better off than Americans. That wouldn't bother them, as long as Americans are still okay, right? It's not going to be this, oh, we're envious position. That's childish. That's elementary, right? It's the idea, anything that doesn't take from us, more power to you, right? It's the whole concept of if the three of us decide that we're going to compete in business and two of us decide that we are going to do it without inconveniencing and costing the third guy any money, but he doesn't agree. He says, no matter what we do, I'm going to get ahead. Even if I have to cost these two as much money as it takes to get ahead, or for me to get ahead, I'm going to step on them. I'm going to impede their business.
That sounds about right.
That's different, right? That is indirect warfare or indirect conflict. That's not what I'm advocating. What I'm saying is, in a situation where we can both have everything we need, because that, in my mind, falls into a post-scarcity mindset, because it's almost like I think most Americans are trying. I think America as a society is trying to wrestle with how we progress to the next step of national evolution, maybe, or this just how we get into a post-scarcity mentality. How do we feed every mouth? How do we feed house every head? And how do we take care of every child? How do we empower every person? And that's a post-scarcity goal. And the idea of you being bigger than me as a negative thing is a very anti-post-scarcity mentality. It's very have and have nots, right? Like, for you to have, I have to have not. And I don't think it is like that. I pray it's not like that, right? Like, if it's like that, we're all doomed, because if there can only be one, then something's wrong. Something's missing. We've got something wrong in the makeup, right? It's like there have to be more than one. And I've said this a few different ways. I think I said it last time, that we could lift everybody out of poverty, the entire world out of poverty. If we do this right over these next 10, 20, 30 years, we could lift the whole world with us. And it's not a matter of, having this beautiful land of milk and honey. It's the matter of everybody having the infrastructure and things that they need to meet every need and take care of every problem, right? Solving problems becomes automated. And that's the idea behind AI. That's the idea behind post-scarcity mentality. And so I would hope that it's different than that. Not that you're wrong. You might be very right. That may be what it is. I don't know. It could be a failure to imagine at the U.S. leadership level. It could be a failure to imagine at the CCP leadership level. I don't know. I hope that if that's it, we can educate and cooperate better than that.
Well,
sorry, I'm done preaching. Yes.
Yeah, it's like if every people is thinking like your ways, there will be no tariff, no war, no conflict, no competition of those kind of two big nations, right? So, you're very right. Those kind of thoughts are very right, but I don't think the current two leadership team is thinking like that. There's one trying to be the number one. There's one trying to kick the number two spot and then make sure that never reach the number one. This is what's happening. When you read Trump's report, like all the kind of news, right? What he's saying is China is doing what? China is catching us. China is blah blah blah. It's everything is China is doing that. So what he's doing is like he is trying to build those kind of conflict in some ways, right? He's trying to let people know that China is trying to be the number one.
Yeah.
Right. For example, the recent AI, China is building the DeepSeek, right? So there's tons of news saying like it's trying to compare ChatGPT with DeepSeek, right? So there's lots of people saying like DeepSeek is only 1 year behind ChatGPT, right? We need to invest more to make sure it's not catching us. Everyone wants to be the number one, right? Especially a country that's been number one for more than 50 years.
Yeah.
Right, maybe 70 years after World War II.
Yeah.
It will be very difficult to the United States to be the number, I think.
Interesting. I just hadn't considered it being a negative thing if the Chinese market surpasses. Now,
well, I mean, that's you and I. That's like normal people.
Yeah, I agree.
You know?
I agree.
Like everybody would agree with that. That's a utopian type of attitude where everybody is working together. But when you're a leader of a country, it's like you're not going to be number two on my watch. We've been number one, so I'm going to do everything, especially when you're dealing with somebody who's a businessman.
Well, if I put it in context of like I'm the president and how do
you have to run the president.
Right. If I put it in the context of I'm the president and how do I make these types of decisions for the country, the question becomes, is the reason that I'm afraid of them becoming number one because of the way they handle themselves now? Right? If the way they handle themselves now is authoritarian, because let's talk about what we're dealing with here, right? The U.S. is a democracy. China is an autocracy, right? So it's led by autocrats. And so you have a very different mandate very, very different mandate going on. In one country, you have the mandate of the people that has ideally the ability to rise up and produce change. In the other country, you have the will of the few that produces top-down change and imposes change. So if the fear is, if that were to become number one, and let's talk about what number one looks like. Let's say that the reserve currency gets changed to the yuan, right? And all of a sudden, the deals that are going on internationally are being transacted in yuan, like many of them in Asia are now. And so the U.S. is no longer the reserve currency. So our economy is no longer bankrolling the entire global system, the geopolitical system either. And so if that's the case, then what do we have to be concerned about? And if the answer is it's led and controlled by an autocracy that is self-serving and dangerous to its own people, you see where I'm going? Then at that point, your concern isn't that they're number one. Your concern is that they're going to get the ability to take you out and impose top-down order on top of you. That's a different concern in my mind. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I know.
That's a very different concern than because let's say that we were talking about Europe, the EU. You know, if EU got bigger than us, I don't think anybody would be pitching a fit. It wouldn't be like, oh no, that's horrible, right? So what's in that? Is that
okay.
And I'm just trying to think this through. I'm not trying to demonize anybody. I'm just trying to
understand. So let's see. In your memory, does China invade any other countries?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. In your memory, does China has any military base out of China?
Before the Belt and Road Initiative? Not that I'm aware of.
In your memory, do you think China has ever kind of beat other countries?
Well, no, but I do. I also know what it's done to its people.
Okay. In your memories, do you think China has any allies?
I'm not familiar. I don't know.
Right.
I'm sure, but Russia maybe.
No.
I don't know. I don't know. Well, you guys have been trading. You guys helped them out when we put
allies is different, right? Allies is like Japan.
Oh, you mean military allies?
Yes.
Not that I know of.
Right.
No.
So, for example, based on my previous couple questions, right?
Well,
China
wait a second. Have you invaded other countries? India, on the border between your two countries, has been disputed now for 75 years since they became a country. You guys have fought over years. You still have active military members. So, yeah, it's contentious, but it's from what it seems like you're arguing over small portions of land. And I've never seen China attempt to infiltrate India, like move into India and take over Mumbai or something. So I haven't seen evidence that they want to do that. But again, this comes from I think my unease, again, in the situation that I'm president, right? My unease comes from the way that they handle their own people. It's hard to, it's
so
interesting.
If I ask you that, right?
Yeah, I keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, if China is developing without allies, without invading other countries, without kind of using military to threatening to get a deal with other countries. China is basically growing by themselves to get this stage to be the number 2 right now. Right? This is from what I can see, especially after China joined the WTO after 2000. Right? China is growing super fast in the 23 years, 25 years right now. Right? So China is dependent on themselves. The government is using all they can, from what I'm saying, is to grow the economy, make the people living better lives, right? Yes, there's some issues the government is treating the people, but why China cannot do better to its people after the government reached their goal, right? From what I can see, the goal is, in Chinese is like, I will speak Chinese, is like 中华民族的伟大复兴 is the Chinese people will finally stand up. In English, it's Chinese people will finally stand up. China has a history being invaded by Japan and also being invaded by U.S., even U.S., United Kingdoms, all those kind of.
When have we ever invaded China? We came in during Vietnam and like helped you guys.
It's 1900.
Or so you're talking about the end of the Silk Road. You're talking about back in the day.
Yes, back in the days.
Gotcha.
8 countries from, I think from Russia, from U.S., from UK, even from Turkey. They all invaded China in the 1900, right? After 1950, I think it's 1948, right? China people finally trying to stand up.
Was Britain one of them? Because somehow it all worked out to Britain having Hong Kong.
Oh,
right? That's how Britain got Hong Kong, right?
China a lot. They get tons of money from China.
Britain invaded
Yes. So basically, Chinese people finally stand up after PCC take over.
Yeah.
That's what I can see, right? And then finally, the economy getting better and better, and then the whole Chinese people want is the entire Chinese people stand up, right? So who knows if China really become the number 1 in the future? Can start have some allies, can stop doing better to its people. I think it will happen.
Right.
Right.
1 second. No, you're good. Go ahead. Sorry.
So, we cannot judge that government cannot do anything good to their people in the future.
Yeah, I wouldn't make that claim. I would. I don't know. So we talked about having. I talked about having 750 or 780 bases outside of the U.S. territory. A lot of those are used as peacekeeping. So the U.S. refers to that as soft power, right? Like extending its soft power around the world. And that's the humanitarian aid and the efforts that go out to feed mouths, to provide, vaccination programs, to help build infrastructure. There are tons of Americans that do that sort of stuff. And that's the soft power extension of the U.S., which is a huge portion. That is actually some 20% of our economy goes to that. And so I think the West in general now has come to see that as a mandate, as part of being successful and part of being on top. It's required that you give and that you extend a hand down to people to help them out. And
somebody's trying to get some money from them, right?
Some of them are. Well, to produce. You're saying to produce consumers. Yeah, I don't know that that's all that it is. I can see I can see why you say that, especially coming from a capitalist society. But there's also tons of humanitarian aid that occurs even in the country and in between the citizens, and whether you're talking about churches or religious organizations or you're talking about just general NGOs, the appropriate NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and so the reason I mention that is because I don't have an awareness of a lot of that going on from China, and that's I get it. They don't have all of their infrastructural challenges in place yet, right? They don't have all of their people taken care of yet, and they're still working to do that. And no one should look at an industrializing country and say, "Look, you're not helping the people around you. That's horrible." That's not the point. It's more what kind of posture do we perceive you're taking when you come to us, right? Is it a, "Hey, how you doing, friend?" or is it a, "You better watch out"? Right? It's a different feel. And so and that's probably why you see differences between China and U.S. as far as they talking like we're bad and us talking like they're bad. But we can look at extreme examples of that. Autocratic states. North Korea it's a dictatorship, but I mean it's highly autocratic, and so it's a very, the family that runs the country has people brainwashed, and they think Americans are the enemy, and they think Americans are attacking them all the time. And I don't know how much that plays out in other parts of the world. I don't think every Chinese person believes that we're their enemies, do they? I mean, that's not?
No.
It's because I don't know an American that thinks that. I can't imagine Americans thinking that Chinese people are the enemy, like they're just trying to get us, and we just need to watch out. That seems. And we don't think about Europe like that, right? Europe is just as industrialized as we are in many ways. In some ways, they've been industrialized a lot longer, right? They industrialized first, and well, I guess we mechanically are industrialized if we're going to talk about industrialization. But the Renaissance and all of the stuff where they actually culturally, evolved before we did, and so it's interesting. It's interesting because that's what I want to get to the heart at is how do we help China and not create this adversarial position to where when they do get on their feet, when China does stand up and does have the military footprint that it seems intent on developing, that the first thing they do isn't point their guns at us. Right?
No. So, have you ever heard about the first island chain?
I don't think so. Tell me about it.
So, the military base, China is being kind of present by the first island chain from the United States. If you do some research.
China's being what? Present?
Yes.
Okay.
China cannot get out of the first island chain.
Okay.
The first island chain will be Japan, South Korea, right? Because if you go to the map, right? So the South China Sea, South Korea.
Japan running on the outside.
And then also
the Koreas.
And then also the Australia. And also there's South Asia.
The Philippines. And
right?
yeah.
Basically, China's ship cannot get out of the first island chain.
So you're saying you're landlocked?
Yes, and also Taiwan.
You're wrapped up in islands.
Yes.
Okay. In
Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, Australia, and also Philippines, those kind of stuff.
Yeah.
China cannot get out.
So importing, exporting, right? Challenges.
Yes.
Okay.
So if same situation happened in the U.S., what do U.S. people will think?
I don't know.
If the East Coast, for example, from New York to Miami, is being controlled by China, what U.S. people will think? If the entire South Carolina,
And you're saying they won't they haven't been letting China use shipping lanes and importing and exporting?
It's being controlled.
Okay, because I know that Hong Kong was sort of the gateway for a long time, and the East India Dutch Company or the East India Company and the English companies would ship, originally before the Suez Canal, they would ship around the Horn of Africa, but now through the Suez Canal and then around the South China Sea to Hong Kong. And Hong Kong was sort of that's why Hong Kong, my understanding of Hong Kong, was sort of the bank of China, right? They sort of interfaced China to the rest of the world. But you're saying that even in modern day, because we're talking about 110 years ago, 120 years ago, you're saying even modern day that you guys don't have like equal access to shipping lanes in the South China Sea?
So if there's one day Trump make a decision to block the entire first island chain, China's ship cannot get out.
Did they ever do that? Have they done that?
No.
Okay.
There's one time, yes.
So it's the same challenge we have with the Panama Canal.
Yes.
Which is it being staffed, maintained, and managed by Chinese companies is extremely disconcerting. That's 65% of our shipping, and so that's the same type of situation.
But in China, it's 100%.
No, I'm not comparing. I'm saying it seemed. Well, I was comparing. I wasn't competing. I was saying, so it's a access and control issue. We don't even have control over our own shipping lanes and the ability to import and export.
So U.S. is super far away,
right?
From Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Philippines, Australia, right? They control the entire island chain around China. China cannot get out if there's any war happen. Makes sense, right?
I see it.
How close South Korea and Japan and Taiwan from China?
Yeah.
If you fly, it's only half hour.
Yeah.
Right, from Taiwan to China mainland.
His touch.
Yeah.
And Japan's just miles, 12 miles, 13 miles in
Yes.
some places. Yeah.
Yes. And also South Korea is basically kind of connected,
Yeah.
right? So what kind of Chinese people would think that?
Yeah.
They have been scared in that first island chain for how many years?
Yeah.
More
200.
than 70 years.
Yeah.
Even
been a
right
while.
now.
Yeah.
Even right now, right? The U.S. military base is around China.
Yeah.
It's very close to China.
Got 2 in the North China Sea. We've got 2 at the south tip of Japan, and we've got 1 in Guam. Like Guam's 1,800 miles away, but still, it's on the it's over south of the Hawaiian island chain. So we've got 3 technically bases right there.
And also Taiwan.
Well, yeah. Do we don't have troops in Taiwan, do we?
You have.
Okay, I didn't know if we had troops there. Okay.
So what China government or China people will think.
Yeah.
For example, Cuba, right? During that time,
I remember
when
Putin,
Russia,
not Putin. It was Russia. Yeah, it was the USSR.
USSR,
Yeah. They
doing something to Russia.
they made a point.
Yeah.
They made a salient point.
Do you know,
Yeah.
do you know how many missiles South Korea have from US?
Yeah.
Like, right?
Yeah.
So what China can
Yeah.
do?
Well,
If you think that way, right, it's unfair for China, right? China is blocked by the first island chain.
I hadn't considered it in that context.
There's another second island chain.
Yeah.
It's designed if China break out of first island chain. If you do some research on that,
Yeah.
there's another chain to block. So first chain, second chain. China cannot get out.
Hmm.
It's already been developed for years, and it's also happening right now.
Yeah.
So that's why China wants to be the number one.
Well, it sounds like our countries have some things to discuss. It sounds like we should work some things out, because the idea that you guys don't have equal access to shipping lanes or wouldn't is, and of course, war would be a different scenario, but I think we should lay plans in such a way that war is always off the table, right? So we come up with a plan that says, look, we won't do this, we won't do that. You know, maybe we need to pull some bases. I don't know, but I think we should come up with a strategy that helps China feel a little safer and us not worry so much, because
I think I explained another question you have,
Mhm.
why China wants Taiwan so much.
Yeah.
Because Taiwan is in a key island, is a key island
Right.
of that first island chain.
Right. Right.
China is so close to China, the Taiwan is so close to China mainland.
Yeah.
If Taiwan is being controlled, I say controlled is,
Yeah, I understand.
you understand, by US.
I understand. And a lot of times I think Americans, when they hear about the Taiwan issue, it seems kind of almost a battle between the old ways of the world and the new ways of the world in the minds of Americans. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to project. I'm going to say in my mind, it has seemed like a battle of the old way of the world versus the new way of the world. And in the old way of the world, I would describe as let's go back. How far back do you want to go? The Mongol Empire, right? Where it was just dominate, take everything, conquer as much as you could, kill everything that you couldn't, and move on. And in that regard, Taiwan is 22 million people, something like that are saying we want to be independent. We don't want to be part of this country and this group. We don't want to be subject to the CCP, and we stand alone. Let us vote. And for years, they haven't been allowed to have a democracy. There's been stall after stall, and now it's coming out very clearly that the reason is because China doesn't intend to ever let it happen. And it's this thing where that's 22 million people, right? There are countries on this planet that aren't that many people, right? That's a lot of people. That's the size of California. So you're talking about, well, yeah. Anyway, it's a lot, and I don't want to be fact check on that because I could be wrong. There could be more. I think they're around 25 or 28 million people in California, but yeah, I think that's part of it is we don't understand. It seems to us like this old way of the world trying to impose on the new way of the world, and they want to be a democracy and they want to have independence and control their own destiny, and China's just saying no. I also see the context of us meddling in their affairs, right? That's us in the Chinese's business, and they didn't ask us to come in. They didn't ask us to do that, but the Taiwanese definitely did, right? They definitely asked for the help, and we helped them develop, right? So how do you see it as a Chinese citizen?
So if you read the history for China, the Taiwan thing, right? So there's a civil war back in 1945,
Mhm.
right? The PCC and also the I think the other party's name is China. I forgot the name.
Yeah.
Of another party. They have a fight.
The White
right?
Party and the Red Party.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the White Party failed.
Yeah.
Right. And then who stand behind the White Party is the United States. Who stand behind the Red Party is Russia.
That's when Mao Zedong
Yes.
was taken down.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why the White Party failed, and then go to the they just escaped from the China mainland and then go to Taiwan. So the U.S. is supporting that party for a long, long time.
Before the war, you mean? Like, so they helped?
Even before the war.
We helped?
Yes. If you read the history, so that's why Taiwan has a long history with U.S. That's starting from right before the Civil War, before the World War II. Okay, so that's the reason why I think Taiwan people are so close to U.S. To be very transparent.
Right.
Starting from
because we backed them and funded them and armed
Yes.
them and probably trained them and all that stuff prior to the Civil War.
yes,
That just makes it really kind of crappy.
Interesting.
it's interesting, right? So I understand why China wants Taiwan back.
Yeah.
It's like because Taiwan, I think, is super important for national security.
Right.
If you see that,
Even if it's just by not letting a potential enemy have a
yes,
foothold inside your
yes.
territory.
Economy-wise, Taiwan's economy, China has lots of problems, right? Taiwan's economy is not even the first 10
Right.
for economy-wise, GDP-wise, right? So from economy-wise, I don't think China has intention just to get that place back to grow the economy, to kind of benefit the economy. No, because China has so many provinces that have better GDP than Taiwan, right? But from national security-wise, from the people, from history-wise, China wanted it back.
That makes a lot of sense. I had wondered what it was because it comes across, I think, a lot of times over from where I'm sitting, it looks a lot of times like it's just sort of that's a subversion of my authority, which is not a good reason to do something in and of itself necessarily. But if it's the same reason we wouldn't let Cuba be taken over by the USSR, that makes perfect sense. It's the argument I've made for and against Ukraine before, right? Which is,
I want missiles in your backyard.
right, what if someone conquered Canada, right? We would freak out, and that's essentially what it looks like.
If you just watch the map,
Yeah,
you understand me. How close
Seen it.
Taiwan is.
it's very close. Yeah, I
Yes.
think it's 21 miles across the strait, something like that.
Yes.
It's crazy short. Yeah,
Yes. And also watch where is South Korea, where is Japan, where is Philippines, where is Australia, where is
Yeah.
If you watch it,
I've definitely seen that. I know what you're talking about. I recognize. I've studied a little bit about the geopolitical challenges that's gone on down there, and it makes sense. I don't. Everybody's scared of China, and I don't know why. Australia, it's like, and it seems like if you look at the history, Japan was the aggressor. Right? I mean, we had to go to war over it, and now. I've read a lot on that. They were
rethink why U.S. back up Japan after the war.
right. What's that?
Then you need to rethink why U.S. kind of supporting Japan or back up Japan after World War II.
Well, we did it because we felt that we had the duty to rebuild. We felt because we destroyed them,
Yes.
and we felt that it was our incumbent upon us to help them recover from it, which is what you would want to see a country do, honestly. It's part of the reason I trust in foreign diplomacy in the U.S. because we don't just go in and kill everybody and be like, kick you while you're down and leave and goodbye. We tried to help them restructure. That was part of the agreement, was that they would not be an imperial nation anymore. So because the U.S. identified that imperialism was a lot of the issue that was going on. That's what led them onto your shores, right? Because we had to go in and help you guys fight the Japanese during World War II. They invaded your homeland. They invaded China, and they invaded everybody. They were just they're landlocked, and so they're completely dependent on imports, exports. As soon as the world said we're not dealing with you, they were over. It was only a matter of time, and so they either hit back or they just went belly up. They didn't have a lot of choice. I'm not justifying their attack on us. I'm just saying I see where it came from, but the reality is that we go in afterwards and try to reconstitute them and help them rebuild. And I've always thought of that as a good thing. I don't know. I hadn't considered it with Taiwan though. That makes a lot of sense because I'm just not as familiar with that history yet. I haven't studied it. So, yeah.
So, from my view, okay, if you read it from different angle,
Mhm.
right? I understand U.S. really kind of helped Japan to rebuild,
Mhm.
right? But why U.S. leave a kind of super big military base there?
Well, that was to keep them in check.
Okay. Why South Korea?
They needed it, from what I understand. We fought a Korean War over it. We went into, and now, just as with Vietnam, there's a lot of
Yeah.
there's a lot of questions there, right? Like, why were we doing that?
Yeah.
But yeah, and I'm not a history expert, so
Okay.
I only have a cursory knowledge of these subjects.
So I think during that time, if you read it from different angle, okay, so U.S. foresee China and Russia will be the allies, right? So they need some military base around China, especially China Sea.
You think so?
Yes.
So you think it was well, maybe.
If you kind of read it from different angle,
Maybe the country was acting completely inappropriate, aggressively back in the I mean that's the whole thing that started this. What's going on with Russia was the invasion of the Balkans, right?
Yes.
It's just us setting up bases all around Russia, and that could very well have been what was going on. There were
I'm a military expert, so
right, and because there really was back in those days, and this is what I see now as a modern American reading about the past. I see this obvious mentality of this anti-red commie mentality, right? Like the red commies. There's the commies are the enemy, no matter what the economy. And I mean, I get it. I get that we didn't agree with communism, and we weren't. We were completely antithetical in some ways to communism, but declaring, you know, like China is. How do you describe China? Is it communist still? Do you still describe it as China? It's a mix. So it's just autocratic, right? It's just top down control. It's an autocracy. So people in control just have control, and so but there are still if you meet a 80-year-old American, the chances are good they're going to be a very anti-commie, just and it's like, and because they came out of the Second World War, and that's what most of the country felt like they were fighting. Was two fronts. They were fighting communism, and they were fighting fascism, right? It was the battle of the Ists, right? It was just, and so
you focus the people. It's like the propaganda that you have the, what the government will have the people believe, so they will focus on that.
Well, there's that. But I mean, there really was a worldwide struggle for what ideology was going to take. Was going to take the pole position on the planet. It really was. Germany, full on, where fascist Germany would have dominated Europe and eventually dominated Asia. They would have subsumed everything, and it would have been a very different world that we live in today, right? And so, in the same way, if Japanese imperialists had taken over China and Korea's and Russia and everything else, if they had just invaded everybody, there are a lot of countries that would have lost their sovereignty in that. And was China one of them? I don't know. China at the time was not industrialized. You guys were highly agrarian. You were a bunch of farmers, basically. And I'm not downplaying you. I'm just saying that it was not a battle-hardened society at the time. And so it was a tricky thing. And so there are some older people in our country that feel like we helped pull China out of the fire in that one. I'm sure that that's a mixed bag. I'm sure that's partly true and partly not true. I'm not trying to demean anybody. It's just it feels like we haven't been aggressive toward China. But I don't know. It seems like the Chinese people may see it a little differently. Like the bases being set up and all that might be aggressive, and I just hadn't ever considered that aspect of it.
Close.
Right, I hadn't considered that aspect of it.
It's super close. Right, the base, military base, basically 100 miles away.
Yeah.
It's too close.
Yeah.
Even Taiwan is like 20 miles away.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there are two of them. There's two of them on the south of Japan archipelago.
Yes.
So
you can't see it both ways, right?
Yeah, and yeah, I've seen warfare predictions where it would show how things would play out. The first thing is those two bases get destroyed, and then the next thing you know, you've got Guam 1,800 miles away, and the next thing Guam gets hit, and now we've got a 3,000 mile distended battle to fight, and there's no scenario in which there's no scenario in which we just make a cakewalk. It's crazy. So many people would die.
Yeah.
There is no way we can allow that to happen, right? We have to avoid that at all costs, in my opinion.
But I really want to ask you another question.
Sure.
So I understand there's a need for South Korea to have a military base to protect themselves from North Korea. But why Japan still need a military base?
I don't know. Yeah, I would have to look at that is part of the articles of surrender that were signed by the emperor as he stepped down, and as we converted them to a democracy. So I don't know. I would probably say that if I'm guessing, that it has to do with maintaining power abroad. You're probably not wrong on that.
So Japan, for military-wise, they're pretty strong right now. They are not allowed to have kind of big ships, right? But their military is very strong. I should say very strong. They are the number 5, like a
Military
Navy.
power.
Navy.
Yeah.
Right, military power
In the world.
Why they need a U.S. military base?
Yeah.
Right now, in 2025.
I would say it's probably to give us projection into the South China Sea and because we have alliances set up with Australia, so we have an agreement with Australia to come to their defense. We have a defense agreement with South Korea. We have one with Tokyo and with Japan as well.
Yeah.
And so they're considered allies. And so we use it to maintain, I would say, project power into the into the Eastern Hemisphere. That would be my guess.
The pressure for China is so huge when surrounded by those countries, right?
Yeah. Because we do the same thing in the Indian Ocean. So we do the same thing around the Horn of Africa and into the Med. And so I would say that's what it is. That's one of those we're talking about 3 of those bases or 4 of those bases that are outside of or part of that 780 base footprint that's all over the world. They stretch from Reykjavik to Antarctica, and so, yeah, I don't know. I that's something that feels so amorphous or out of touch to me because it doesn't feel like a decision I would make. But it's, I wish we just projected soft power. I wish it was not all hard power across the world, military might, but because you don't win the affections of foreign countries with Marines, right? It doesn't win you friends. It makes enemies. So, I wish it was different. The Doctors Without Borders and the humanitarian organizations, but I don't know. So you think China takes it as a direct threat? It feels like a direct threat.
Because I know the first island chain, those kind of topics has been discussed in China for years.
Yeah.
Right, because China cannot get out from the first island chain. And then if you search first island chain, second island chain, is a U.S. strategy of how to handle with China. So U.S. has intention to block China into the mainland instead of out.
Yeah.
If you do some research on that part.
Well, sounds like a containment policy.
So that's why I say China is like a prison in the first island chain. Cannot get out.
Okay. I hear that.
Yeah.
I hadn't considered it like that. Thank you for sharing.
So it's kind of different angle, right?
It is. No, that's what we're looking for. That's why we're talking about it.
Yes. So I just think it's unfair for Chinese people to have that first island chain.
Yeah. You have any questions?
I don't think I have anything. I think you pretty much covered everything. Unless you have something else you wanted to share.
Yeah. Do you have any questions for us?
No, I just hope there's no war coming in 10 years.
Yeah,
and
right.
There's no more tariff coming soon.
Right. Well, I hope we can find a way to shift the public focus from. I think we're getting to a point, and I talk to my children about this. We're getting to a point where my generation, our generation, or the next generation has to focus their sights on post-scarcity mentality. How do we get out of this? In order for me to succeed, you have to lose mentality, because how's it said? In a world where it's an eye for an eye, it leaves everybody blind, right? So it's this attitude of, there is a post-scarcity option available, and with the advent of AI and the implementation of it into our supply chains and into our distribution networks, it's going to change things. And I think that we might be on the cusp of being able to actually recognize post-scarcity at a global level for the first time. And so figuring out how to do that is a tall order, man. If we're talking 10 years down the road, there's going to be 10 billion people on the planet. That's a lot of people.
There's lots of people.
That's a big
you're
supply
right.
chain. That's a huge logistical challenge. So, but I think we can do it, right? I think it's possible. And not only that, we're going to see humanity branch out into space, right? Get into low Earth orbit and get a lunar industry and get asteroid mining going, and all these new frontiers, all these gold rushes are opening up. And
gold rushes indeed.
Well, I mean, that's what it seems like to me.
I think in the next couple of years, like probably starting this year, like as far as like robotics and AI, I think it's gonna be a real boom.
Yeah.
Like I think ChatGPT is already saying the model that they're using, like when they get to GPT-5, there's not going to be anything else like what we're using now. Like this is stuff is going to be the real old stuff. The other thing is going to be, the AI thinking for itself, actually creating other AI.
Yeah.
You know, things like that.
Well, when we crack quantum computing, it's all going to change anyway. So the nature of everything can change. So that's going to be that's going to be a game changer. But
yeah, I just said we could worry about the Terminators coming for us.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But still, I hope we can. I've always thought of China as our friends, and I think I see them as in a similar position to where we are, which is how do we get ahead without threat, without concern, without fear, and with confidence. And I think there's a way that our countries can do that together.
There's definitely a way.
I think that our country's self-assumed and self-imposed mandate to reach our hand out to people extends to China as well. And I think that we should analyze any policies that impede that cause that to not be what you guys see in us. Because if all you're looking at are our bases and seeing our ships, and it's probably pretty threatening, I can imagine.
And also the 10% tariff on everything.
I can imagine. And so I think we got a challenge coming up to figure out how to deal with that. But yeah.
Probably don't have to deal with it for maybe 4 years.
Yeah. Well, you definitely gave us a lot to think about, and I appreciate it. So,
Thank you.
Anything else before we wrap, guys? No?
No.
Well, thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful night, a wonderful week, and thanks for coming in again.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Cheers.